I have gathered more evidence to further prove the claims I made in the last documentary and to explain some of the points raised. I know that some things may be difficult to get your head around. They were for me, but when I studied the occult, it horrified me what some people will do to another life. Just look at what they are doing to your children. They do know the cause of all disease because they cause it, as all the headlines about sugar prove. I will now further prove with more evidence that they are withholding and denying you more truth. This will allow them to unleash more hell, pure horrific, as I will show you, but don't be alarmed because when we unite our minds, we become a force of one. This page from the Book of the Kabbalah teaches that in one such lodge, the places where all Freemasons hold their meetings, hemp seeds containing the hashish drug were separated from parrot food and burnt with the incense. The results were startling, but definitely bad in the magical groups wherein these practices took place. The use of drugs and sexual attraction is one of the principal methods employed, and the effects of such practices are thoroughly and completely evil. It is no longer secret that the British establishment hold drug-fueled homosexual orgies, and some ministers have been linked to paedophile scandals, and this book on the occult teaches that this was a practice carried out by occultists, followers of the occult, the dark arts. Priests have also been caught up in paedophile scandals. The first president of the Royal Society that brought science to the West was Robert Murray, and they were steeped in the esoteric metaphysical traditions of Freemasonry, which is contact in the other realms we call the spirit world. Rosicrucian, Neoplatonic, Hermetic thought, they were all Kabbalists. Neoplatonic, combining the Platonic ideas with the theosophy of the East that eventually surfaced in Scotland, and many presidents of America are descendants of the English or Scottish, the British. America's first president, George Washington, the first leader who was a Freemason, followed a system founded in the US in 1875, which claims to show the unity of all religions in their esoteric, secret teaching, manifested by occult phenomena. He had a vision of a new Europe coming down from the heavens in the control of America. The fact that the American scientists once released LSD onto their unsuspecting public is proof that they have experimented with these drugs on their own public. All evidence throughout history shows the easiest way is via the food chain, and that is what the apple was, and MSG and aspartame and many other additives now are. This is further proof of the fact that the two nations that took the world to war because of one of their leaders was in the control of a government that held drug-fueled orgies, practiced the Kabbalah, the ancient demonic art of the Hebrew. It then goes on to teach, in the account of the witchcraft trials of the Middle Ages and later, the use of ointments to produce supernormal results, which means beyond what is normal is mentioned. Such ointments usually contain drugs which have a strong effect on the heart and nervous system, as well as producing hallucinatory effects. The use of hallucinatory drugs is as old as humanity, and in all cultures we find them, but always the effects, when assessed over a longer period, are seen to be so deleterious that in all civilization their use has been banned. That is where the saying hearts and minds come from, as I taught you previously. It also proves that this was a practice carried out in Roman times and all empires before. This is because the leaders of the Roman Empire also held orgies, and many of their leaders were homosexual, and this proves the same group of like-minded people built all empires, occultists, the Kabbalists. When we see children having similar thoughts to what adults have while intoxicated with alcohol and hallucinating while high on drugs, serious questions must be asked of the science world and all the chemicals they put in our foods. Just because of a rule of law, the science world believes that they have a God-given right to tamper with our foods. Why are children having thoughts of aggression, violence and even murder and homosexuality and suicide all associated with alcohol and hallucinogenic drugs? They trick you with words like additives, preservatives and taste enhancers. You wouldn't need any of these in your foods if we were like our ancestors and we grew our own. The young are also now getting the physical diseases that adults who abuse their bodies with alcohol and drugs were the only ones to get. Their hearts and minds are suffering, but as they keep saying, times have changed and it seems only for the better for a select few in all your societies and far worse for the many, even the very old, sick and very young. This is another page from the Kabbalah book that teaches by experience over thousands of years illuminated mystics of Egypt and Chaldea from whom this system is derived, worked out a system of notation which would enable them to classify some of the forces which they had come into contact, and so gradually a body of knowledge was formed which would be handed down to succeeding generations of students. This knowledge was how Einstein received his knowledge of how to create an atomic bomb. It comes from the teaching of the Golden Ass, a book of black magic about the Egyptian mysteries of Isis that Britain and America follow. That is why their oldest scientific journal is named in her honour, Isis. Theosophy, a form of speculation, mysticism or philosophy aiming at the knowledge of God by means of intuition and contemplative illumination or by direct communion. And the Golden Ass teaches of two gods. It must be a little clearer which ones the scientists of Britain and America follow, the one that believes in experimenting on people's minds via their foods. This book teaches that the very name QBL, Kabbalah, signifies from mouth to ear, i.e. that it was an oral tradition, never written down until the school of Moses de Leon first gave the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, and Zohar, and the Book of Splendor to the outer world. This was brought to the West by Isaac the Blind, a French Jew, during the 13th century, the time of the Crusades. Mouth to ear means secret. This is what modern-day Kabbalists use, the mysticism used in the Theosophy of America. This is another page about the dark arts and evoking spirits. Such individuals were wizards and witches, magic practitioners, who sometimes used herbal drugs like thorn apple to stimulate visionary experiences and participate in rituals designed to conjure spirits. They are using drugs once again, and you witness from the other page, from another book, that hemp seeds were used, and this created sexual attraction, and it made these people indulge in orgies. And drugs with hallucinatory effects all come from the one plant, Ayushka. Ayushka is the mother of all hallucinogenic plants, and when you understand genealogy, all plants, all derivatives of hallucinatory plants that have hallucinatory effects, they come from one mother plant. And the Peruvian Indians said they received the knowledge to grow these plants from the cosmic serpent, and you're told in the Bible that this entity is the one that created the apple, the first foodstuffs that we were warned not to eat. This book continues. From the 8th to the 11th centuries, Kabbalistic texts like the Sefer Yetzirah made their way into European Jewish circles, and based as they were on the experiences of the Merkava mystics, promised spirit contact at the highest level. Even though Talmudic doctrine warned about the dangers of esoteric practice, several mystical fraternities were established in France, Spain, and Germany. These people experiment with drugs, and then they put these drugs in our food so that we'll have similar thoughts to what they're having, and then we'll think that these thoughts are natural. And sadly, some children are being born thinking that these thoughts are natural because they've been programmed while they're in the womb. Thorn apple is highly hallucinogenic. Haitian voodoo priests used a concoction to make people into zombies. And the thorn apple is a derivative of the potato. It's genetically connected to the potato. And when you understand what people are saying, that the potato is the masculine version of the apple, therefore, when you're warned not to eat the apple and all fruits, you're warned not to eat the potato and all root vegetables. And then Ayushka is the mother of all hallucinogenic plants, so therefore you're not meant to use any hallucinogenic plants or herbs. Or tobacco, because tobacco comes from Ayushka. They have brought their experiments around the world many times, and the fact that the Haitians used this herb long before the European conquests means that the Kabbalah was in South America long before, and the lords of the British Queen that are Freemasons that study this art brought the potato to the West, a food that caused the famine. The golden ass was what the Egyptian mystics used, written in the 2nd century BC, the same time the Pharisees and Sadducees from the Bible were created, the ones that Jesus spoke out against many times to warn us and eventually lost his life. As I keep teaching, I am a witness for the truth, and that is why the truth has always revealed itself to me. That is why I have gathered it for you. As I've shown you before, the top right square shows that in 200 BC, the Sarmatian Jews invaded Europe. This is a book on Russian history. And then, as I also shown you before, this book on the Kabbalah teaches that they eventually settled in Poland in Eastern Europe in the late 18th century, and a curious Kabbalistic sect known as Chisholm was formed, and some of its members were known as the wonder-working rabbis, and those wonder-workers made great use of the sacred name. The leader, Chisholm, was Rabbi Israel Baal Shem Tov, the master of the divine name. In certain groups of the Chisholm, the language of paradise was heard, and by its use the rabbis worked wonders and showed evidence of this, just as the Pharisees did in biblical times. I also told you that Baal Shem Tov are the names of the devil, so this is further proof that these people are communicating with the dark side, the dark forces. Then I showed you, while there was a Polish Pope, the Vatican kept quiet about the cure for cancer. This shows a connection with religion and the dark arts, always, or religion and science, because that's what science was known as, and it originates in the Kabbalah. And this is now what secularism is, because secularism agrees with science, or secularism has science. So the connections between religion and science has always been there.
We are helping people to heal by cancer. Yes, we have several people utilizing the principle by Dr. Issa Clarke.
This article teaches that the remains of a suspected vampire have been unearthed in Bulgaria during excavation work on a 13th century graveyard, the same time that Isaac the Blind appeared in the West. This proves that cannibalism was caused by mysticism and the experiments brought by Isaac the Blind when he brought the dark arts Zephyr Yetzirah with him during the 13th century. It was also a time when lupus also appeared in the West, and another time of their empires, the Empire of Carthage, also had cannibalism in it. All their empires have. This article teaches that this man was turned into a cannibal in America by a drug called cannibal, and it compelled him, it forced him to eat the face off another homeless individual while high on this drug. This article proves that wherever the art of the Kabbalah or the mysticism of the East appears, a system that America now follows, cannibalism is not far behind. That is because the Kabbalah opens the gates of hell. That is what secularism is, modern day Kabbalism, devil worship. America has turned secular, and their leaders follow the occultic mystic arts of the East, theosophy, and they use science. And cannibalism has now appeared in America, as it did when Isaac the Blind, a French Jew, brought the dark arts to the West in the 13th century. They use words like history will repeat itself, but you now know that history is repeated by the same group of people, and they use words like coincidence. This will prove that cannibalism is not a freak of human nature, but an experiment carried out by the Kabbalists on the people of our world for the one day honour and worship. The world needs to realise what these people are doing before it gets purely demonic once again. American science that once released LSD into their unsuspecting public, that now have cannibalism, also controls Europe, and we see cannibalism follows Kabbalists, children of the devil, everywhere. How has it returned to Europe? This individual was arrested for biting people on the beach in Spain, and it took 10 police officers to restrain him. In order to create the same recipe or get the same results, you must have the same ingredients. You will not get lung cancer from drinking alcohol, nor can you make vegetable soup using fruits. To get the same reaction or result without the original ingredients is impossible. But when you are in contact with the creator of thoughts of cannibalism, homosexuality and paedophilia, as Freemasons are, you will get the formula. Science has been brought to our world many times by just one group of people, and cannibalism, lupus and cancers have all appeared throughout all the empires that they built, and all the evidence is showing that they do honour and worship the devil. As I said, the Freemasons honour and worship Jah Bullon, Yahweh, the god of the Hebrews, Bull, the ancient god of fertility and licentious rites, debauchery. That is why the both sides of the British House held drug-fueled orgies, depravity, and on Osiris. Osiris is the brother of Isis. Brother and sister had an incestuous relationship. Our world has always followed one side of the story, and serious questions must now be asked where the drug cannibalism came from. This book teaches that there has been a long history of the relationship between alchemy and government, and a relationship of unease, paranoia, secrecy and official denial. In 1618, such was the paranoia and fear of the authorities that the King of Bohemia was being advised and influenced by the Rosicrucians that it led to the 30 Years' War. The Rosicrucians formed the American Brotherhood, and the American Brotherhood formed the American government. And all the evidence shows that when the mind is flooded with hallucinogenic drugs and habitual use of drugs like marijuana or hemp seeds, it leads to the thoughts of homosexuality, paedophilia and paranoia. All these thoughts are accepted by the British establishment that brought modern science to the Western world, that we now know hold drug-fueled orgies. This paranoia could have also been another reason that led to the Second World War, as well as their experiments on children allowed to be carried out by the Vatican, connected to the dark arts. Because during this war they also accused Germany of making an atomic bomb, and they still talk about it to this day. The atomic bomb came from the mind of Einstein that said he received his knowledge from outer space. It must now be clearer where his knowledge came from. He is of this group of people. He also had thoughts of paranoia. That is why he wrote 2 letters to the then President of America, Roosevelt, to get them to create a bomb. Paranoia definitely was a major cause of the Iraq War, a time when the British government were in the control of drug users that had homosexual and paranoid thoughts, and were engulfed in paedophile scandals. Could that be why 3 members of the British Labour Party, all lawyers, 2 of them women, worked for and protected a paedophile organisation and even awarded them $500,000 of taxpayers' money? A High Court judge they employed founded an organisation to keep paedophiles out of prison. People of Ireland, be warned, before your current Taoiseach even sat down on his office chair, he promoted a judge employed by the Labour Party of Ireland, and the Labour Party of Ireland are all connected. All Labour parties across Europe are one, they have the same ideology. That is why during the Iraq War, the British Labour Party kept accusing Saddam Hussein of having weapons of mass destruction. The world needs to realise fast we are in more danger from drug-taking paranoid governments like the British and Americans, who have a weapon far worse than any on earth. They have a reptilian tongue and speak for the devil. As I said, the American Indians were right when they said, "White man speaks with forked tongue." Now you know which white men. They believe that changing their religion from Cannibalism, Judaism as it was in his lifetime, and soon to be secularism, and their political parties from communism, socialism, and now capitalism, nobody will know who they are. It's insane. The Rosicrucians came from the east to France and then Scotland and now America. That was what their first President George Washington brought. It is his hallucinations that the world is now following, not the visions that Jesus had for us from his pure mind. That is why he said, "Keep the body pure, because your body is your mind." When you flood it with hallucinatory drugs, your mind will be full of hallucinations that all come from the mind of the serpent, as this book teaches. When the mind is flooded with elements from the source of evil, then sinful acts like homosexuality and evil acts of murder, even demonic acts of cannibalism will unfold. That is because the individual will be flooded with like-minded elements that all came from the same source. That is why the world is now living in an illusion created by the devil through the mind of his worshippers on earth, that have his visions via their hallucinations. So when you look up to his scientists, you will want to create more toxins like sugar that destroy you physically and mentally, and weapons that can annihilate as many people as possible in one go. When you follow your world leaders, you will follow their leader. That is why you are back in hell and getting deeper by the day. You need to get your children out of their armies before they bring more hell to our world. The devil cannot play with the weapons his disciples made for him when he hasn't got your child's mind to control and fire them. That is why you must now purify all your minds. We must stop eating the foods of science. That is how the secret works. You all have guides, but they trick you to follow the wrong ones. That is why your lives are disastrous, full of sickness and disease and wars that they cause and profit from, because their foods do control your thoughts. Food for thoughts. That saying is more true today than it ever has been. The British and American governments both built their empires using science, and both use hallucinogenic drugs to seek guidance from the other realms, as all evidence now proves. This practice was carried out by Moses, and that is why he was also a homosexual paranoid schizophrenic. Similar thoughts of world leaders today, both religious and governments. Not very wise to follow leaders that carry out these practices, and that is why we have been dragged back to the time of the Hebrew, a time we are now in. A world of war, hatred and revenge, sickness and disease, a world once again controlled by one group of people that hold drug-fueled homosexual orgies, as their ancestors did in Roman times and all empires before. Once again, when our children are having these thoughts, serious questions must now be asked about all the chemicals they put in our foods. These people experiment with chemicals and force you to do the same, and they have thoughts of homosexuality and force you to accept them by drugging your foods and then using the rule of law. Thoughts will only register in your mind if these chemicals can enter your brain, and they can because yeast is a prion, and prions carry messages into the brain. All chemicals are messages, and yeast carries messages from the other God, the creator of the apple and the bread, the devil, the two foodstuffs you were warned not to eat in the Bible. He does exist because why would world leaders that have his traits honour and worship him and then force you to do the same by force feeding you his foods? The first was the apple, as the story teaches, their first sex drive, and the first biological weapon against you that destroyed you physically and mentally. The American scientists that lead the science world are tricking you of the reptilian brain theory, and be warned, when you accept this, you are saying that you are children of the devil. He was the reptile. I will accept only when I can verify, remember? I will now show you how the reptile got into your brain and took control of many of your thoughts, and that is why they are getting darker and more sinister. This article teaches that a French science team found that the monarch butterfly, famed for its long migration, has wasp genes in its genome. It also teaches that there are numerous species of parasitic wasps that lay their eggs in caterpillars. When the larvae hatch, they feed on the caterpillar's body, and the wasp has evolved a truly extraordinary way of subduing the caterpillar's immune system to stop it from attacking their offspring. The female wasp produces millions of virus-like particles in its ovaries and injects those into the caterpillar along with an egg. The virus almost invade every type of cell in the caterpillar's body, and their DNA gets integrated into their genome. Normal viruses carry genes for the proteins they need to replicate, but brachyviruses, as they are called, are different. They carry genes, some of which are originally from the wasp, that turn off the caterpillar's immune defense, making it helpless against the wasp larva. Brachyviruses can no longer replicate themselves. Instead, the genes for replicating them have become incorporated into the wasp genome. It then goes on to say, in other words, over the last 100 million years, wasps have tamed once free living viruses and turned them into sophisticated biological weapons. The piece on the wasp mentions that viruses were used by the wasp as a biological weapon, and I taught you that certain humans use food to carry out biological warfare on us, and the apple was the first such foods. When you understand the story of the apple and its creators, the cosmic serpent, and you understand snakes have eggs, and the apple looks like an egg, you understand why we were warned not to eat it. That is because, as the story teaches, there was one creator of the universe and all the good in the universe, and the other was the creator of the apple, the serpent, as the story teaches. And just like the wasp, the serpent, one of many forms of the devil, found a way of subduing our immune system to stop it from attacking its offspring, the mini snakes, yeast. The apple contains millions of microscopic organisms, parasites, yeast, mini versions of its creator, just like the brachyvirus from the wasp. Other scientists have discovered that under microscopic inspection, yeast resembles a snake, a serpent. Neuroscience, or the science of the brain, is teaching that we have two brains, an inner brain and an outer brain, and they say the inner brain is reptilian. This all happened via a transgenic process, which means containing genetic material artificially transferred from another species. The genetic material is a prion or yeast transferred from the apple and all fruits, and now all processed foods from all your supermarkets, all owned by one group of people. These foods were carriers of disease, as is all meats today, because bacteria survive in meats, and when we eat the meat, bacteria enter our body. When the body is flooded with an aggressive organism fed by an aggressive element, then the person will think the same, especially when the organism is in the control of another entity. Yeast is a mini shapeshifter like its creator, and it tricked our prions it was one of us, and this allowed it access to the brain, the control tower of your central nervous system, and the place where thoughts are processed. You were warned not to eat the apple, because this is how the cosmic serpent got inside your minds, and it got into your world within, via your mouth, the entrance for all disease. This allowed the devil to take control of your mind. This is how his people, children, disciples on earth have taken over all your countries. Just because they have the same accent as you, and they look the same as you, they are not the same as you. This is what ancient scripts teach of the reptilian race. As I said, yeast thrives and survives on sugar, and yeast is a prion controlled by the force of darkness that doesn't care about our internal or external world, and when in abundance, the individual can be forced to destroy both worlds. The destruction from within is called autoimmune disease, and this also causes every other physical and psychological disease and disorder, and sadly some can be made to carry sinful or demonic acts. And as I said, the American Indians knew a little bit more than the rest of you. They called these people the ones with the forked tongue. A snake or a reptile has a forked tongue. This book also teaches that alchemy was practiced by all nations, that Wei Po Yang from 120 to 140 AD was author of the oldest existing alchemical work in China, the Zhang Tu Qi. It also teaches that Mauritius from the late 600s, a Christian hermit and alchemist, was said to have taught Prince Khalid ibn Yazid, the first Muslim alchemist. It teaches that Nagarjuna from India may have been a Buddhist Lama that introduced the art to Tibet. This book teaches that the reptilian brain theory, the ideology of American science that used the dark arts, is also the theory of Tibetan monks. This book teaches that ancient Tibetan belief was that Glastonbury was the centre of the spiritual world. It is the gateway to hell. That is why I know that Britain is the beast in the Bible, and their masters are the original children of hell that brought the Kabbalah to the West. Jesus was a child of the light, and anyone that follows alchemy, the original form of science, needs to be guided by the forces of darkness. That is why science has always been known as the dark arts, and when you allowed your children to be taught science, they need a guide from the dark side. And as I said, this book taught that the first French Pope, Sylvester II, contacted the spirit world, and he used alchemy. He was an alchemist, therefore he used the dark arts. And the Abbot Dunstan of Glastonbury also used alchemy. You need to evoke the dark spirits to learn about science. And as I said, I am being guided by the Spirit of Light, the Spirit of Jesus, the Spirit of Truth. And all the books I have shown you are connected, but they didn't just fall on my lap. They come to me mysteriously in strange places, and I would find myself on a plane and buying a scientific magazine, and that's how I read the article about the wasp. And then another one was about the article of the serpent venom being used in medicines on different planes, different trips, books in charity shops, books in a bookshop that just popped up for one weekend. And charity shops in London, charity shops in Ireland, all places people would give me books. That's how they were all connected. It's to tell the other side of the story, because you've been listening to just one side. These people control religion and science, and religion and science are connected. They both come from the Kabbalah. They both come from the mind of the devil. So any spawn of religion or science goes all the way back to the devil. It's just like any spawn of the hallucinogenic plants goes all the way back to ayahuasca, which goes all the way back to the devil. Any spawn of fruit from the apple goes all the way back to the devil. And the potato is a hybrid of the apple, so therefore any spawn of the potato, root vegetable, goes back to the devil also. That is how it is. They come from his mind. Hippocrates said to eat the foods of the soil. The Bible teaches the green vegetables. That is why Monsanto have genetically modified all foods and herbs again. They don't want people to grow their own. That's why they're attempting to stop all farmers in Ireland growing their own. Ireland has the most fertile soil on earth. Why are they importing vegetables? If anywhere else can build greenhouses, why can't Ireland? It's because their government don't want you to. Because many of them are Freemasons. I hope by now you are beginning to realise what Jesus meant when he called these people children of hell. Their descendants are on the ascendants in our world today. And as Kennedy said, they have taken over all your governments, including the British, the American and the European Union, and most European governments, including this rancid Irish one. So they do honour and worship the devil. And they also are using chemicals in your foods to control your mind. It's like a drug will hypnotise you, leave you not in your right mind. You're just confused all the time and you're easily manipulated. And as Aldous Huxley spoke of in his book, Brave New World, of a world utterly transformed through the most efficient scientific psychological engineering, people are genetically designed to be passive and therefore consistently useful to the ruling classes. Science. The psychological techniques are engineering of consent, and by using the press and the media, modern day scribes, they can get you to do whatever they want you to do. They triggered the Brixton riots in London. They triggered football violence. They triggered all the racism. They control your mind. And when you believe them, because you don't know how to reject, you'll start having them opinions. That's why they say that the British are inherently racist. All their organisations are racist, even the police. But it's not their fault. They've been programmed to think that way. That's why you must always say, I will accept only when I can verify. Better still, don't read the paper. And people of Ireland, I don't know why you're reading the Sun newspaper that racially abused the Irish for 20 years. 20 years non-stop. A 4-page pullout of 100 Irish jokes. These people have an ingrained hatred for everyone else. Chemicals do mess with your thoughts. You do know that now. Hallucinogenic drugs and alcohol slow you down. They affect your biochemical knowledge. And they also affect your thoughts by affecting your electromagnetic signalling. This is the fast thinking. You need this when you're under attack, an infestation of bacteria, or your body needs to quickly get rid of toxins, or quick reactions. This is what this side of the body is. And their chemicals slow this process down. And we need magnesium, potassium, calcium and sodium, the elements we used to find in our vegetables, for our central nervous system and our hormonal system to fully function properly. Your central nervous system is the core of your existence. The page from the Kabbalah book taught that these people create drugs for sexual attraction, and homosexual thoughts is given and receiving the wrong sexual attraction. Every element on earth sends out and receives a signal, and the good side of science once discovered what they call animal magnetism. They discovered that men and women emit a different frequency, and that is what alerts them to the opposite sex. According to the magnetizers, the human body is comparable to a magnetized electric transmitter, its opposite poles shining with different colors. The picture on the left shows the attraction between a man and a woman, and the one on the right shows the hands of two women that repulse each other. The tests were carried out on plants, and results were similar to the ones carried out on humans, But now, like every human, every plant has been tampered with once again by chemicals. That is what genetic engineering is. When these signals are tampered with, confused thoughts can enter the mind, just as thoughts of murder and cannibalism can. That is why your foods can genetically alter you, physically and psychologically. They can affect you body and mind. That is why sugar makes you obese, and when in liquid form it can make you angry, aggressive, destructive, even murder. That is genetic engineering by artificial means. Polarity is the state of having two opposite poles or having different or opposing parts in opposite directions. The quality in electricity of being attracted to one pole and repelled by the other, as the magnetism test shows. You can change the polarity of a solution by changing the chemicals or by heating it up and by altering the frequency. And thoughts are frequency, they are energy. In the book on the Kabbalah, the members of the lodge all changed their thoughts or frequency at the same time by imbibing or inhaling the same drug at the same time. They were all connected to the same thought process. They all thought of sex and indulged in casual, indiscriminate sexual intercourse, not restricted to a particular person or kind. This is promiscuity, an orgy, and it even led to homosexuality, as the evidence of the British establishment prove, and the Vatican. The drug overwhelmed them and increased their desire for sex, and they wanted it and didn't care who with. This is a bit like people who are overwhelmed with greed, that desire money and do not care what they do to earn it, even if it sees other people suffering. The same is for food and for drugs, and the overwhelming desire all started with a chemical reaction that altered the person's thoughts, the frequency they were on. This altering of the thoughts continue in the womb. As I showed you, the smoke of the mother gets into the baby in the womb, so therefore what she drinks and eats will get into the baby in the womb. What else can it eat and drink? So if her drinks are laced with toxins and chemicals and her foods with bacteria, they'll get into the baby. The Zika virus proves that viruses get into the baby. Science has lied about everything, so they're lying about the fact that these chemicals can affect the baby in the womb. They do. So they will affect the baby's thoughts just as they affect our thoughts. And in a developing mind, these thoughts will be stronger. So therefore, when the child is born, it will think completely different than its parents. This is how your children will be beyond your control, as all the prophecies foretold. They will be programming your child in the womb even before it gets into this world. That is why a so-called primitive race of people, called by the British Empire the Aborigines, purified their bodies 6 months before conceiving a child, and then the woman ate pure vegetables while she was carrying the child, and then for another 18 months when she was breastfeeding the child. The child was being fed the same elements that the woman ate and her ancestors ate. So therefore, that is why Dr. Weston Price always discovered that they had the most healthiest, happiest, bouncing babies ever, just like all our Irish ancestors with happy round faces. The way everyone in the world was, a face like the sun. But now, all the foods are toxic, and look at your children. Look at the deformity and the disability in the children. And Dr. Weston Price also discovered, as I said to you, white flour and white sugar was the ruination of the Western world. And I showed you that through my research I discovered that caffeine causes birth defects in animals and plants, and it will affect us. This dark side of science has to be stopped. All their experiments on us have led to all disease, as all the evidence is proven. But these people have got into a habit of lying, covering up and silencing the truth, either by murdering it or by way of law or executing it. But what they fail to understand is the truth will never go away or ever be silenced, because without truth there would be no life, and truth is what keeps us all alive, because all life comes from the mind that created all truths, the mind that is guiding me. One of their man-made elements that produces negativity in the body that really messes with your electromagnetic frequency is aspartame, and messing with this frequency leads to all other problems in the body. It slows your reaction down to help you fight disease.
Telling me that in all of our pharmacology, all the millions of dollars spent with research in cancer, the native Indians who were using this hundreds of years ago already had the solution to cancer.
Those who were, yes.
My name is Sergeant Rick Schiff. I'm an 11-year veteran of the San Francisco Police Department. I hold the department's highest Medal of Honor for bravery. That used to mean a lot more to me than it does now. What I'd like to talk to you about today is my now 7-year-old daughter. This is an identical twin. Her sister is now dead. Her sister, when she was 4 years old, Kristen, developed a highly malignant brain tumor that had spread throughout her spine and her brain. The doctors told us that we had really two options: take her home, let her die, or bring her in for massive dosages of chemo and radiation simultaneously. In either event, she was going to die. They were quite certain of that, and very quickly. Believing her only chance to be the standard route, we gave her the chemo and radiation. It burned her skull so bad she had second-degree burns and her hair never came back. To change her diapers, we had to wear rubber gloves because her urine was so toxic and it burned her. At the end of 6 months, miraculously, she survived the standard treatment, although there was a high expectation she wouldn't. She still had cancer. We were told, sorry, we've done everything we can. Now she's going to die, probably within a couple of months. My wife and I, choosing not to accept that, started reading. The first book I picked up, the 3rd chapter, discussed Dr. Brzezinski. As you may guess, I have some expertise in fraud. In fact, I'm quite certain there are enough attorneys in the room that I could be vordeered as an expert in fraud. And I conducted my own investigation. I have no doubt the man is not a fraud. I have no doubt that he does what he does out of earnest belief that his medicine works. And now you're in a position to judge for yourselves whether it works or not. But it's well established by the FDA that it's non-toxic. 18 months later, we took my daughter off the anti-neoplastin. She had not died. She had no signs of tumor. She remained free for 18 months of cancer. Within a month, the cancer was widespread in her brain. We put her back on Brzezinski's. By the way, at the objections of our doctors, for some reason felt that it had failed her. We put her back on. Within 9 weeks, the tumor was completely gone. She died last July of neurological necrosis. Her brain fell apart from the radiation. The autopsy showed that she was completely cancer-free. Out of 52 cases of that disease ever, no one died cancer-free, just Chrissy. So she didn't die of a terminal illness. She died of my inability to care for her properly, and she died from bad advice. She died because there's a government institution that disseminates false information and is not looking out for the welfare of the people. You know, ladies and gentlemen, I swore an oath 11 years ago, and I think most of us in this room swore it at one time or another, to uphold the Constitution. It says life right in the beginning.
The evidence is showing that the American government used the Kabbalah and they worship the devil, the serpent, and they're tricking the world that the serpent created their brain, which created their mind, as I showed you earlier with the reptilian brain theory. It also shows that their experiments have led to all physical disease, including all cancers and all mind disorder and dysfunctions like homosexuality, paedophilia, and even murder, and far more demonic thoughts like cannibalism. The American government are also covering up the fact that aspartame causes tumours on the brain, and this is now the biggest killer of children, and like sugar, it is in all their foods and even medicines. And now, because of the denial of the American science, that 1996 that video was taken, where in 2017 something caused that poor child's brain tumour, and they do know, but they just brought it to Europe, and now European children are suffering the same fate as that poor little girl. It has to be stopped. In 1977, the then chief executive of the pharmaceutical company CDO publicly stated that he would call in all his markers to get aspartame a license. The executive was none other than Donald Rumsfeld, who we all know later went on to become George Bush's defense secretary the cause of the Iraq War. George Bush is a member of a secret organisation, the Skull and Bones, that formed the CIA. The CIA are a scientific and secret police organisation, the alleged assassins of President Kennedy. Kennedy warns of these people and their conspiracy, and he gets assassinated. And then anyone that accuses them is either silenced or called a conspiracy theorist. I hope you are beginning to become a whole lot wiser. While Searle was trying to win approval, the FDA found flaws in another of their products and so decided to investigate the studies submitted by Searle for aspartame. There were 15 studies, and Dr. Jerome Bressler was asked to check 3 of the studies by the FDA. He found 52 major discrepancies in 3 studies. Then on the day of his inauguration as President of the USA in 1981, the cowboy, Ronald Reagan, personally suspended the head of the US Food and Drug Administration, the powers on aspartame. A month later, a new head was appointed and a license for aspartame was created. Any key decision makers that were against the use of aspartame were discredited and replaced by sympathizers who were awarded lucrative jobs. See, the American ideal is the all-American cowboy, and Ronald Reagan played cowboys in films, and that is how they programmed the Americans to accept homosexuality with the film Brokeback Mountain. They do know how to program your mind, chemically, vibrationally and visually. When you see a cowboy being homosexual, you think it's okay, but it isn't. You mustn't accept what somebody else tells you until you can verify it. And how can you? None of you speak to God. The European Food Safety Authority agency conducted a review that was surrounded in even more controversy, and their panel concluded there was no need for further review on the safety of aspartame or to revise the previously established acceptable intake for aspartame that was set by American scientists who are controlled by the Brotherhood, their form of Freemasonry. The British Standard Food Agency welcomed the judgment. The industry said the review closed the matter of safety of aspartame. The British Food Standard Agency that advises Ireland is very far away from being a reputable organisation. This article teaches that they covered up an infestation of Campylobacter within chickens. This is very serious when you discover that the acids in the stomach that can burn through steel cannot kill these bacteria. This has led to further problems throughout all your bodies. Here are the findings of a privately funded organisation, a scientific organisation, the European Romazzini Foundation, that I believe is no longer existing because American science has taken over Europe. And they demonstrated that aspartame caused a significant increase in lymphomas and leukemias, malignant tumours of the kidney in female rats, and malignant tumours of the peripheral and cranial nerves in male rats, brain tumours. These tumours were found in doses lower than the daily acceptable allowance set out by the regulatory authorities by the EU and the US. This is even more sinister because, as I said before, that if it is dangerous over a certain level, then it should be removed, because how can they tell what each and every one of us will eat or use? Most people won't know themselves if they don't know what it is in. But they say we should read the labels. I say it should be removed. When you read the labels, sugar has 57 different disguises. And sugar is meant to be a natural product, by the way, and you witnessed all the diseases that caused. This particular chemical is man-made, and it is 200 to 1,000 times stronger than sugar. When your country is in the hands of liars, cheats and murderers, as Jesus called their ancestors, how do you think you are going to know? They believe that once they pass a law, that is it, because a law is a law, and controlling people using the rule of law is what their ancestors did while Jesus was here in the flesh. He also spoke out against them, especially the Pharisees, the scientists of his day. The world now fails to see that they have become a little game of the devil. He creates a law, gets you to go and execute 1 million Muslims, and then he creates another law and allows his disciples on earth to poison your foods. And you allow them to get away with it. You leave sugar in the food. And then they trick you that there are no cures. And you believe them because of Darwin, Einstein and Freud. Many of you look up to these people because you don't understand what they are talking about. It's the same with their religion. They trick you. They make you feel stupid, but you are all highly intelligent life forces. It's deep within you. It's within your mind, as Jesus taught. It must now be obvious that using their chemicals, they're destroying your mind. And this leads to the destruction of your body, because your body is your mind. So when you destroy one, you destroy the other. Scientists have also discovered that people that drink diet drinks, after 1.5 hours drinking them, they will seek food and eat more than normal. As I said, everywhere the Kabbalah that brought science to our world, spread around our world by the British Empire, that has now become the American Empire, that has gone secular, modern day Kabbalism goes, cannibalism and lupus follow, and cancer, and now brain tumours. Could aspartame have been the cause of that poor little child's death and the death of all your children who have died of brain cancer? That is now, as I said, the biggest killer of children. All the evidence is proving that it is the only candidate, and as I've shown you, when toxins can enter the child's womb, it will affect that growing child. That is why children are being born with diseases that people never used to get until they were 60 and 70 years of age, and that was people who smoked and drank. It is also because all the other evidence I have gathered for you is proving that the apple was the original cause of all disease of body and mind, including all cancers. And this was created by the one that science honours and worships, the devil. Malignant means resisting treatment and threatening life. And it seems that this word can be associated not only to a disease, but those who cause it and cover up the cure. It also means exercising a pernicious influence motivated by extreme enmity or malice. Pernicious means destructive, ruinous, deadly, noxious, hurtful, wicked. Malice means a premeditated design to do evil or injure others. Before these additives are allowed in the foods, they have to undergo tests. But what is the point? When they fabricate evidence, and we witness the evidence in all our societies, all the sickness, disease, pain, suffering and torture, and sadly in more cases today than before, many are dying. When you understand that sugar is the oldest toxin on earth, you begin to see, since the creation of the apple, all their experiments have been a premeditated design to do evil, especially when you understand that they use occultism and dark arts in their science, and they do receive their guidance from the devil. Further evidence, as I have shown you, proves that these people caused the First World War and the Iraq War because of lies, and they planned the First World War 8 years before they instigated it. This was the greatest loss of life in conflict the world has ever seen, but they instigated, they planned it. This is what the story in the Old Testament, a time when the world was in their control, the Hebrew, the ones that brought the Kabbalah to our world, teaches about this one group of people. Enmity means the state or quality of being an enemy, hatred, hostility. Religion and science both originate in the mind of the devil, brought to the world by his disciples, the Kabbalists, his children, the Hebrew, the Pharisees in Jesus' time and the pharmacies in our time. And this industry once again controls all our foods, as Jesus prophesied. Jesus also warned of the 4 headless horsemen of the apocalypse, and they are here. My last documentary showed you prophecies that Jesus and his mother Mary made have come true. Here is what Jesus meant by the 4 headless horsemen of the apocalypse.
We've never had food companies this powerful in our history.
Is it coincidence that there are only 4 companies that control all foods and pharmaceutical companies and science? The pharmaceutical industry controls all scientific education, and they are all controlled by members of one group of people, as all your governments now are, including this rancid Irish one. These companies are Cargill, Food, and Glaxo, pharmaceutical, Scottish or British, and they made an attempt to buy Irish Water. Bung, Food and Merck, pharmaceutical, Germany. Archer Daniels, Midland, ADM, Food, and Pfizer Pharmaceutical, American, and the Louis Dreyfus Group, Food, and Sanofi Pasteur, Pharmaceutical, French. People of Ireland, be warned. I taught you Sanofi Pasteur was the pharmaceutical company that was caught injecting meat that went back into the food chain, and they now control your medicines, especially your vaccinations. All European governments are now in the pockets of the pharmaceutical industry, controlled by an organisation known as Codex Alimentarius, and their food companies or supermarkets that feed you foods that cause all disease, especially ones with sugar in and rancid meats. Their laws allow them to cause all the physical diseases once again that were originally covered up with the help of their religion, but even when sugar was exposed once again, they left it in all your foods. As I said, all the empires they built using religion and science were loose in morals. They were full of homosexuality, paedophilia, bestiality, sleeping with animals, incest, sleeping with your family, necrophilia, sleeping with the dead, debauchery, orgies, and grotesque acts of violence, horrific murders, sickness and disease, leprosy, plagues, cancers, viruses, lupus, cannibalism, that is now in our world once again, the right to create and end life, corruption, deceit and dishonesty, and no respect for life, and live it while you can. That is what their new spirituality, secularism is, and that is why they want to change all your constitutions to allow you to accept death. You've accepted physical disease, you're accepting death, and they are now programming you to accept their psychological disease. That is what their law is doing. That is why they forced gay marriage into Ireland. And it will soon be paedophilia with the diversity laws and the Freedom of Choice Act. They trick you with words like human in front of the word right, giving you the impression that every human has rights. And the Freedom of Choice Act, everyone has the choice to be free. But you're not. You're trapped in your own mind. You're stunted by your own beliefs when you believe there are no cures. And then that makes you believe science. That makes you want science. You don't need them. You never needed them. It come from the mind of the devil. There is a good side of science, but without the bad side, we wouldn't have needed them. As I showed you previously, these papers prove that all your elite class, your royal, religious and governments and top lawyers, judges, believe and accept paedophilia. And people of Ireland, as I said, what are your current Taoiseach's intentions? The first day he became Taoiseach, before sitting in his office, he promoted a judge to the highest court, previously employed by the Labour Party, a party originally from Scotland, a party that sponsored a paedophile organisation. This organisation wanted the age of consensual sex lowered to the age of 4. We know how their sexual pravities were brought about because they do take hallucinogenic drugs, the hemp seed and the thorn apple. These are highly hallucinogenic drugs. This book, as I showed you previously, taught about governments appearing on the world stage and using words to have power over you. Using chemicals and word sounds and slogans, they have created an illusion in all your minds that you are the devil's children and this world belongs to him. They have really destroyed your child's minds, and it is to get worse, far worse, but we can stop it. This article teaches that a leader of a Swedish youth group wants incest legalised and also wants necrophilia legalised, which is sex with the dead, which basically is rape of the dead, because how can the dead consent to sex? The young of the anti-austerity party support LGBT, the lesbian, gay, bisexual and transsexual movement. These are the thoughts of the young minds of today, and tomorrow it will be far worse if we allow this to continue. When you understand the story of Adam and Eve that ate the apple, which caused their minds to be severely altered, causing them to have an incestuous relationship, and you understand the sex drug experiments of the British and American governments, then you discover that all European foods have been flooded with the elements of the apple and other mind-altering drugs, and sadly the children of Europe are having thoughts of sexual depravity. It doesn't take Inspector Clouseau or Sherlock Holmes to work out that the foods are what is causing these effects. Sadly, thoughts of child rape are now even in the minds of children. They are having thoughts to rape members of their own family, male and female rape, as Jesus warned they would traverse land and sea. This is the MSG in the foods programming the child's mind. When the body hasn't got enough of the healing elements in it to reverse the effects of these toxins, then sadly the child will be compelled, like the people in the Freemasons' lodges. But they willingly took these drugs. Your children are being forced to take them. As I said, chemicals from the apple in the beginning had severe effects on some of the population, causing great physical and psychological sickness, like homosexuality and paedophilia, debauchery and incest, and all other sexual dysfunctional disorders like necrophilia. These have now all reappeared in our world, along with cannibalism, when they reformed the Holy Roman Empire, the European Union. They flooded all foods with sugar, parabens and yeast, all from the apple. People of Ireland, once again, I am being warned to alert you that your current government do not have the best wishes for the Irish people at heart. You have now become an experiment of the British and American scientists. You now teach their science, and your current Taoiseach wants to create a spy network. Where does he receive his knowledge from? It seems it is the same as the British establishment, and we know how they received their thoughts. He seems to be like-minded. They are soon to stop your age-old practice of herbalism that all our ancestors used since the creation of the apple, because Europe is controlled by an organisation that poisons your food, Codex Alimentarius, which means food code, a clear warning by the name that they can alter your DNA, as I showed you earlier. The proof is there, but they deny evidence that teaches of the cause of disease and also the cure, and stopping herbalism will only allow the disease to spread and get much worse, even more demonic, as predicted. Allowing science to have control over your foods allows them to control your thoughts, which will control your actions, as I have proved to you. Sadly, when all your actions are wrong, you all go to jail, but nothing ever happens to these people because they are protected by the law that they use to destroy all of you and get you to destroy others. As I said, I am being guided by the Spirit of Jesus, and he understands that none of your children, no matter what they have committed, knew what they were doing. They weren't the ones that are wrong. They were wronged by our leaders. Your government, people of Ireland, are the most rancid in your entire history. They are demonic, truly and utterly demonic. Jesus taught Mary Magdalene. His visions came from his mind and taught how to heal a troubled mind and a sick body. You purify it, not add more chemicals in psychiatric drugs. That's why their foods are kosher. It means pure. They avoid yeast, as I keep telling you, and their foods are bacteria free. This article is heartbreaking. This is purely demonic, to give a child so young such powerful mind-altering chemicals. Science hasn't cured anyone, especially psychiatry. All they do is change the name of the disorder: melancholy, manic depression, and now bipolar. That is what they do to their religion. The article teaches that 450 under-18s were given the drugs between January and May this year, said NHS Tayside in Scotland. This article was in 2016. The youngest was a girl of 7. But in 2014, a boy aged just 1 was prescribed the mood-altering drugs. A spokeswoman said antidepressants can be used to treat a wide range of medical conditions. This book teaches that lupus, one of the diseases brought to the West by Isaac the Blind, the French Jew in the 13th century, along with cannibalism, is caused by antidepressant drugs. And the article teaches that antidepressant drugs can be used to treat a wide range of medical conditions, but what they don't teach you is that they also cause a wide range of medical conditions, as is the case with most of their drugs. The British establishment have always tested their drugs on innocent young children, and recent evidence shows so did the Vatican. This is because, as I keep teaching, religion and science have their origins in the Kabbalah, and all the evidence I am showing you proves that world leaders used the Kabbalah. When the British Empire took the children from the Aborigines, they handed them over to the Vatican. They have always been connected, as all the evidence I have gathered shows you. There are now dark forces within you and around you because of the elements they force into you and the elements they keep pumping into the atmosphere, and like does attract like. Soon the thoughts of the world will turn purely demonic. But do not be alarmed, as I said to you, you must stop eating yeast and avoid all processed foods where you can. Grow your own, eat pure vegetables. I have now shown you how they cause disease and all wars, and they cause these using all manner of scientific methods, chemicals, psychology and visual effects. Soon all these experiments are to take a far more demonic turn, and cannibalism is to return to the streets of Europe. You must all take action. Do not wait for someone else. Do it before many of you get eaten alive. As I said, I have shown you that toxins can and do reach the baby in the womb, as the experiment taken when a pregnant woman was smoking. I do not condone any experiment like this, but sadly it is now the only way to convince you, because you have been programmed that seeing is believing. As I said, if Jesus was alive in the flesh today, you would also question him. You have all become a higher authority than God, the creator of the universe, and all the good in it, because you all believe science that teaches there are no cures. The fact that smoke reaches the unborn child in the womb will prove that if toxic air, the first sign of life, can get to the baby, then so can toxins in the water, the second sign of life, or the drinks and then the foods. This is because the baby can only breathe the air the mother breathes, drink the liquids the mother drinks, and eat the foods the mother eats. When the bird eats a worm, it cannot regurgitate a mouse for the young to eat. They eat what she eats. In the beginning I showed you how world leaders got homosexual paranoid thoughts. They inhale hallucinogenic drugs like marijuana or hemp. Therefore, if a pregnant mother smokes any of these, or a boyfriend or husband, she will inhale the smoke, and so will the unborn child. These drugs will have a severe effect on an undeveloped mind, a developing mind, and a mind adjusting to its environment. That is why this book about Darwinian and Lamarckian theory, the theory of Hippocrates, teaches what many great scientists for the good of our world teach, that all disease is environmental, as all the evidence I have been teaching you also proves. Darwin is an ass, Einstein is an ass, and Freud is an ass. They're all from one group of people, and America is leading a Marxist policy. He is of that group of people also. Your food, drinks and education are all part of your environment, and they now control all these aspects of your lives. And this is how they have changed all your minds, which has changed all your lives for the worst. When the smoke enters the child's mind, many thoughts of evil will enter it, like the thoughts that entered the Freemasons in their lodges. And when I was a boy in Britain, people high on marijuana would murder and say that their God told them to do it. These thoughts will be programmed into that child's mind, and it will accept it and think it natural. That's how a child comes out thinking that homosexuality is natural, and when they teach it at such a young age, they are programming your mind so young. They know from the age of 0 to 7 you rapidly take in massive amounts of information to store to later on having your future life to protect you and guide you. But when you're given all the wrong information, you're going to think bad and wrong. Evidence shows that their experiments with drugs produced homosexual thoughts and thoughts of paedophilia. That is why they held drug-fueled homosexual orgies, and some involved children. And sadly, as I have shown you, children are raping members of their family. That is because, as I am also showing you, that the toxins can and do enter the child's womb and program their mind with thoughts even before they are born. This means the child will be having these thoughts even before it enters this world, and that is why as it gets older it will think that they are natural thoughts, especially when the rule of law allows. Next will be paedophilia, incest and necrophilia, as all the evidence is showing. They carried out experiments on the Polish children. They got them to make female and male genitalia out of Play-Doh and then asked them to write down what they were feeling. These people are sick, twisted and diseased. Worryingly, they now can produce cannibalistic thoughts, and it has been tested out on humans, and as I'm teaching, all these thoughts were originally caused by the apple, their first food that we were warned not to eat. All the elements are now in all foods. When people smoke marijuana, they get a strong urge to eat foods. It is what they call the munchies, and if this desire was intensified, they would eat anything that was in front of them, like another person's face. Homosexual thoughts and cannibalism first came from the apple, and then the hallucinatory drugs, both created by science, that honours and worships the devil and receives its knowledge from him. Because of their full control over our foods and our farming, they now control all seeds, and they can increase the intensity of the marijuana drug. So I warn anyone out there that experiments with this drug or uses it, I wouldn't advise you to keep on smoking it, because these people are controlled by the devil's mind, and they will increase the intensity of that drug, and you could end up like this individual. And also people that eat processed foods, it has aspartame in it. This will also trigger this effect. You must grow your own foods. People of Ireland, you have the most fertile soil in the world. Use it, otherwise you will lose your mind. Everything you eat, drink and smoke has now become an experiment of the devil, and you must understand that he created the apple, therefore everything in the apple come from his mind. Therefore he controls all them elements, and all them elements are in your food, they're in your drinks, and they're in your alcohol, and added on top of that is MSG and aspartame. They're all from the devil's mind. He controls them elements. So everything you eat, drink and smoke is full of his elements, and you're not getting calming, healing elements in you as much as you need. And that is why the aggression of all your societies is increasing. So every time you go out and you drink alcohol, you smoke marijuana, or you take any other drug or smoke cigarettes, you are gambling with your mind, with the devil. And trust me, he doesn't lose that often. So if you want to stay a winner, stay away from alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana and drugs, and eat as little as processed food as you can, and eat pure foods, and drink a pint of water with sea salt, 1 in the morning, noon and night. And throughout the day you need to purify your mind. That's what Jesus said, to keep the mind pure. Your salvation is not to be sought in the external environment. No doctor's medicine, but within the individual state of mind with regards to the environment. You must protect your mind. The doctor ain't going to protect it for you. He's going to give you more drugs that come from the mind of the devil. Therefore, they're not curing you, they're making you worse. These demonic, deranged, devil-minded scientists once blamed homosexuality and cannibalism on a freak of human nature. I hope you can now see that this is also one of thousands of lies they have told you. Scientists have also proven that aspartame brings about hunger, and when the dose of this chemical is increased, a cannibalistic effect can be caused. It is 200 to 1,000 times stronger than sugar. That proves that sugar can alter your mind severely. As I have warned, MSG is a food-based derivative of LSD. It's a lipophilic drug. It can diffuse straight into the cell, and it produced the same mind-altering effects as hemp. And this is what MSG does. So when the mother eats foods flooded with sugar, parabens and yeast, all from the apple, the first food we were warned not to eat, and MSG, sexual thoughts will enter the baby's mind. That is why science always teaches that man thinks of sex every 6 seconds. This book by Sigmund Freud, the guide of all psychologists, is sick, demonic, twisted and deranged. How this man ever got to become a top psychologist is worrying. He puts everything down to sex and sexual desires that you now know are forced upon you by drugs in the foods. He also teaches that a boy will argue with his mother because of a sexual fantasy he has for her. He is purely sick. He also teaches the biggest load of bullshit I have ever heard in my entire life. The ego, the alter ego and the super ego. This pesky little man, called one of the most gentle, kind, loving, caring races of people, the Aborigines, a race of savages. Peruvian Indians told reporters that they created ayahuasca, the mother of hallucinogenic plants, including tobacco and marijuana and hemp, are all hallucinogenic plants from the mind of the cosmic serpent, and the Bible teaches this entity is the devil. Therefore, any derivative of these products come from his mind, and we see what they do to world leaders. People of Ireland, CBD products or hemp products is freely available in your country, and anything that descends from the mind of the devil will have his thoughts programmed in it. They're genetically created by him. That is why the scientists that have his thoughts programmed or channeled into them keep creating your destruction with hallucinatory drugs like marijuana that world leaders now use, and tobacco and weapons like the atom bomb. And they also keep tricking you there are no cures, while using all the methods that Kennedy warned you of to keep you from the truth. Take a listen to what he has to say once again, and listen very carefully.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. For as a wise man once said, an error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. We intend to accept full responsibility for our errors, and we expect you to point them out when we miss them. Without debate, without criticism, no administration and no country can succeed, and no republic can survive. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Solon decreed it a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy.
People of Ireland, I end this documentary with an appeal for the herbalists and healers of Ireland that have received their knowledge of all our ancients, so-called wives' tales as the British called them, need help before they stop our practice. I have shown you how they received their knowledge and secret means mouth to ear, Cannibalism, knowledge of their ancients that brought religion and science to our world. We see what their mouths spread, nothing but lies, and when you are taught by a liar, that is all you will become, and the spreading of lies has destroyed many lives on earth than any single disease. The First World War is proof of the contempt, ingrained hatred these people have for life. The Iraq War is further proof, caused by more lies. Then we have all the meat scandals, and recently sugar. What about all the other poisons I'm teaching you of, MSG and aspartame? These people spread war, hatred and revenge, and sickness and disease. Once again, spread around our globe by Britain and America, two nations that use science in the control of children of the Hebrew, that brought devil worship to our world many times before. That is why we have reverted back to the times of the Old Testament, a time Jesus came to speak out against and teach the world the truth. These people know no truth. It isn't in them. They are children of the liar, cheat and murderer, as Jesus taught us. Here is a clip. Listen very carefully to what this doctor will say.
Oddly enough, I was on the staff of UCLA back in the 60s, and I gave the first class at UCLA because one of my jobs at UCLA was to develop the curriculum for the new students coming aboard and also the dental school itself. And so I was fortunate to give the first lecture on mercury fillings that the students had. And in my research, I uncovered that mercury was a concern. In fact, in 1848, it was considered illegal to use mercury, unethical. The then Union of Dentistry was the American College of Dental Surgeons, and it was like the analogous to the ADA. And that group of bodies said it was illegal or unethical to use mercury because of its toxic concerns. But then there was no alternative that was able to be used. So dentists got together and began using mercury fillings because it was more economical. And indeed, there was a serious problem because what are you going to use? You can't use gold. Most people couldn't afford gold, and even the gold techniques were not refined as they are today. So there was no option, no alternative. So this group of dentists began to use mercury fillings, and that group grew and became the American Dental Association. So the American Dental Association has had its formation on the utilization of mercury fillings, which is ironic, of course. Body of evidence that would say, hey, you're using this potentially lethal material while dentists were teaching, and I was one of the ones who were taught, who then taught that mercury was inert when you mixed with silver, tin, zinc, and copper, of which consists of the mercury filling or the amalgam or the silver filling. It's really a mercury filling because 50% of it's mercury. And if you mix it with silver, tin, zinc, and copper, we taught that it was inert, which is a scientific impossibility because everything by the laws of entropy is in the process of decay. And in the case of the dental mercury filling, the decay is quite prominent.
More evidence of the lies that they spread around our globe like a cancer, a virus. He said he was taught a lie that was a scientific impossibility and then taught to spread them lies. How can anyone at the beginning of any university degree know whether their tutor is lying or not? It is new knowledge so they have no understanding of it and will accept what they are taught. But the wise amongst them will know and will not just follow like little lambs because they are told. That is why none of your doctors and pharmacists can genuinely say they want to heal you, nor can they say that they genuinely have the truth, because they won't know whether they've been manipulated or not. That is because they come out of university and follow a formula set out by their controllers, a formula that their masters received from their master, the controller of science. That is why they use him as their emblem, as their ancestors did in biblical times and long before. Every creature on earth now knows once again that sugar causes tooth decay, and instead of removing it from society, they left it in and made more enticing products from the knowledge they received through their hearts and minds from the one they follow, the creator of the apple. All sugars come from his mind except lactose, that we ingeniously created to keep life alive, and that is why their so-called energy drinks rotted the athlete's teeth. Anyone with a lactose intolerance has a gut full of unwanted organisms. Lactose kills bacteria. That is why the mother's milk has lactose in it. It is to stop bacteria from spreading to their child via the food industry. But we see what their food industry allows with the recent meat scandal. All fruits come from the original fruit, the first fruit. They are descendants of fruit, and they all contain sugar like the apple, and sugar comes from the mind of the devil, as the apple does. The potato is a hybrid, genetically modified, as they recently did to vegetables. All the herbs once again. All the recent headlines about the damage and destruction this one element sugar does to life is proof. But we are denied the truth by all your useless, good-for-nothing, low-life, immoral, money-worshipping, career-protecting governments. They will trick you. They are there to get you the truth. Well, how is it they allowed their business associates to poison your foods with elements from the apple, sugar, then MSG and aspartame? Fruits make alcohol, and we see what that is now doing to all our societies. Herbs make solutions that do save lives, but you must be patient. That is why we were always taught patience is a virtue. The British establishment and their knowledge from the devil tricked you they could cure you instantly. But Hippocrates, an ancient healer, taught that healing is a matter of time and also a matter of opportunity. These hypocrites swear his oath. The opportunity is access to the truth, which they are soon to deny the whole world by stopping herbalism. This has already begun in Europe. It has already begun in Germany. Their Chancellor, Angela Merkel, has passed a law that you can only receive herbal products by a trained physician. As I said, when you start out, how can you tell whether your tutor is lying or not, or where they received their knowledge from? If it started in the mind of a liar, then the lie will only spread. That is why Jesus said, Corinthians chapter 2, verse 11, "For what person knows a man's thoughts, except the spirit of the man which is in him?" How can anyone tell what spirit is guiding their tutor? But now I hope, after all that I have taught you, it is becoming a whole lot clearer, because their tutors, or their masters, do honour and worship the devil. You must now be able to see where Angela Merkel gets her name from. It comes from Merck, the ones that own a pharmaceutical company, one of the 4 headless horsemen of the apocalypse. Therefore, it must be obvious that she is protecting her ancestors and allowing for their lies to continue. My ancients were healers of Ireland. Therefore, the knowledge I have, and many of the herbalists and healers of Ireland, is knowledge that the British Empire do not want you to know. That is why, over the last 1,000 years, they have attempted to destroy this knowledge, and they even once did it with the potato. This has already started in Ireland because the founder of the Irish Institute of Medicinal Herbs cannot know whether she speaks the truth or knows the truth, because knowing is endless, and anyone thinks that they know the truth has been stunted. It's arrogance. So therefore anyone that thinks they have the right to teach you what they know obviously isn't genuine. When you seek the truth and healing, you will know that you have received it, because you genuinely want to heal, not have a career. Herbalism comes from the heart, not a university, because we see what can happen to our lives when we listen to people that think they have the answer, as the Organisation of Herbalists of Ireland now thinks. I do not put my trust in no man or woman on this earth, only in my guide, the spirit of all truth seekers and healers. Look what has happened to us continually when we put our trust in religion and science. Altruism, which means devotion to the good of others, cannot be taught in university, nor can common sense either, because the best way to cure any disease is to stop putting the cause of disease in you. They left sugar in everything and then insulted your intelligence by putting people on the radio and television and writing in papers to tell you to avoid sugar. This is what their ancients did in biblical times. It is why Jesus continually spoke out against science, the Pharisees, and the scribes, the media, because the media is a spawn of science, and science comes from the mind of the devil. Therefore, anything connected to science comes from his mind. That is why they make alcohol, cigarettes, and weapons of war. When you teach your children science, you keep the spirit of the devil alive. You keep his thoughts in the hearts and minds of your nation, and deny them the spirit of Jesus, the truth, the guide of all truth seekers and healers. They have always passed the blame to you, as they did when they executed the truth, when they say he came to absolve you of your sins. Now they say you should read the labels. Many of you would not know. There are 57 different disguises to sugar and over 30 for MSG, and that is because, as I keep teaching you, the guide for all science is the master of disguise that thinks it funny when he can trick you to kill yourself and others with the help of his children on earth. And another game of the devil is the rule of law. The entire British and American and now many European governments, including this rancid Irish one, are in the control of his children. You also now discovered that university is not a place to find the truth, nor is the Vatican, because if they were, then why have we lived a lie ever since the day they executed my guide, the torchbearer of truth, light, peace, love, harmony, happiness, health and life? Many herbalists are full of his knowledge, but not the ones that use alcohol, because alcohol is made using predominantly fruits. Herbalism is herbs. People of Ireland, you cannot be taught altruism, which means the love for all your fellow citizens, nor can you become a healer when the first thing you have in mind is a career. I personally couldn't care about a piece of paper that teaches me I have a degree that originally came from Freemasonry, that brought science to the world. I have something far more special, a gift from my God, the creator of all the good in our universe, the ability to help people heal, kept alive by my desire to heal. I have taught you the secret that was never meant to be a secret, kept from you. It was a message from my guide, the Spirit of Jesus, that was to teach all of you how magical, mystical and beautiful life truly is. Long before any of their religions or science, we all knew the truth, because we are all a part of the truth, because the truth creates life, the truth protects life, and the truth will always save life. That is why my guide said that only in truth shall you be saved. Not the lies of the British and American Empire and their science that has now become the European Union, the Holy Roman Empire as Nostradamus warned. You must rise up and seek the truth before they take it from you. Therefore I say unto you, whatever things you desire, when you pray, believe that you will receive them, and you shall have them. All my life I have always desired to know the truth, and how I could help people heal. And life for me was pure hell in the beginning, growing up in a nation of lies. People of Ireland, I urge you, do not let them do what they have done to the British and American people, to our people, the people of Ireland. Many of our brave, gallant men and women gave up their lives so that we could have a better life, a life of truth and justice. Isn't that what Jesus once did for all of us? You will not get it with your current government. Jesus is screaming at me to warn you. They are soon to change the course of Irish history forever if you don't stop them. And soon you will all be on the road to hell like the British and Americans. We now witness what their instant cures do to 300,000 Americans each year. 300,000 lives lost because of lies. That is why they also didn't care what they did to the Iraqis, because they do it to the Americans, and the people of America do not realize the enemy is within. That is why they assassinated Kennedy, and the same is for the very, very small-minded people of Britain who keep waving the Union Jack as their queen goes by. I cannot tell you what to do. They will accuse me of causing an uprising. You must seek the truth, and your heart will guide you.